Welcome to the Bible Forum. It is Sunday night, January 6, 2019. I knew I was going to do it. On my notes, I have 2018, but my check today, I wrote 2019. I hope you're doing well and you will overcome that kind of faux pas. That's stuff that happens when you get old, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not that old yet. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. I think a lot of interesting things. I hope that you will see them that way. We'll get right into it with the issues that percolated this week around the world. We've got this shutdown on the southern border. We've got migrants that are coming across the border, caravans full of people. Well, another migrant caravan, this time an estimated 15,000 people, are being reported now as preparing to depart Honduras next month. And that's from the immigration activists. You can take that for what it's worth. Washington State has become the first state in the nation, or at least could be the first state in the nation, to allow something called human composting. When people die, they call it recomposition, and it involves placing bodies in a vessel filled with nutrient-dense soil so those bodies can quickly decompose. And then the soil is returned to the families. It's cheaper than cremation, I'm told. And apparently they can sprinkle it on their grass or on their flowers. I don't know what they will do with that sort of thing. Folks up there in the Northwest are a little bit more liberal than most. Not more liberal than New York, but certainly more liberal than South Carolina and me. Oh, and Australia is introducing a new program in a handful of their grade schools that will have boys and girls wearing clothing of the opposite gender and wearing religious clothing, including Islamic burqas. They're calling it conditioning. Don't believe the Bible. Don't pay any attention to the Bible when it says that these sorts of things are going to happen at the end of the age. All you have to do is read the newspaper. Are you following the debate in the wall argument? Democrats en masse are refusing to allocate funds for a wall to keep these unknown people from flooding into our nation. Flooding in, not coming in through the doors of the buildings that house the people that do the paperwork so that we know who everybody is, but just let them all just let them all come in, apparently. Well, the newly formed House of Representatives voted this week against a wall on their very first day. That was Thursday. They had all the hoopla and the music and the nonsense of organizing and electing and all that, and the first bit of business was to shoot this thing down. Walls are immoral. Walls are anti-American, they shouted. At the same time, not one Democrat is outraged by the situation and indicated their willingness to let any undocumented immigrants live with them while they get settled. And a recent headline touted words from our former president saying, quote, "I purchased a brick house and I've got my own wall," end of quote. And you can search high and low. There'll be no reaction. There'll be no outrage. There'll just be crickets. The quiet acquiescence of the necessity. Gated communities are the same as a wall on the southern border. How many of our esteemed Democrat friends live in a gated community? You have to have permission to come in. You have to have a card, or the person there has to call the gate and give permission for you. I go through this all the time. And they take my driver's license and write down the number or take a picture of it, I don't know which, before I'm allowed in. But no, we can't put up a wall. Ironically, the Democrats' two main arguments opposing the wall are that a wall on the Mexican border would be immoral. The other argument is walls don't work. Can you see the irony here? Do you note the immorality? They're saying things they know not to be true. Walls do keep out undocumented aliens, refugees, children, and other deserving folks seeking asylum until and unless they go through the process. The walls only slow down honest people. And the processing, from what I can tell, isn't all that lengthy. But it is a legal matter, and it has to be handled that way. In an interview with Tucker Carlson, the mayor of Shiloh, Israel, David Rubin, explained what his nation did to zero out, that is, to completely and utterly eliminate illegal immigration across that nation's southern border. Do you know what they did? Of course you do. They built a wall. And the wall works. Walls have always worked. Look at the old timers. The king in his castle, he had a wall and a moat with alligators. What's the real issue here? The real issue is that Democrats need more votes. Votes they can buy with your money if they want to stay in power. It's very simple. I noted the religious makeup of our new Congress. This time around, for the next couple of years, more than 6% of the new 116th Congress is Jewish. 34 Jews among the total 535 lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, Jews make up 2% of the U.S. population. So Congress as a whole is more than thrice as Jewish as is the country in general. That, according to Pew Research Center in Washington. The number is even larger in the Senate, where 8% of the 100 members are Jewish. This Congress has 4 more Jews in it than its predecessor, which had 30 Jewish members. And it's far from the most Jewish Congress ever. That was in 1993. That Congress boasted 51 Jews, nearly 10% of the total. All of the Jews in the Senate are Democrats, as are all but 2 in the House. The Republican exceptions are Representatives Lee Zeldin and David Kustoff from New York and Tennessee, respectively. They are the only non-Christian Republicans in Congress, according to Pew Research. Congress as a whole is overwhelmingly Christian, even more so than is the nation. 71% of Americans identify as Christian, compared to 88% of Congress. Both Protestants and Catholics are overrepresented on Capitol Hill. The most underrepresented group is the unaffiliated Americans. 23% of Americans who don't identify with the religion at all. And that's true of just one member of Congress this time around. The new Arizona Senator, Kyrsten Sinema. Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Unitarians, they're all there. It is a cosmopolitan group. We'll see how they make out. Are you paying any attention to the Women's March? This is a little-known organization founded in opposition to President Donald Trump's policies and views. Well, it seems many involved feel that the leadership has taken the movement in the wrong direction. They're citing anti-Semitism. They're citing support for BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and their close ties with the Nation of Islam, led by Louis Farrakhan. Now, the BDS movement works to end international support for Israel's oppression to Palestinians and pressure Israel to comply with international law. The new organizers for the march in Eureka, California, which is about 3 hours north of San Francisco, said they canceled the protest, quote, after many conversations between local and social change organizers and supporters of the march, end of quote. They did this when they discovered participants would not represent the diversity the Women's March organizers seek to edify. And according to KRCR-TV, up to this point, the participants have been overwhelmingly white, and thereby lacking representation from several perspectives in our community. So we're canceling it because only white people showed up. Gotta love them. Are you worried about a recession? FoxBusiness.com is reporting the payroll processing firm ADP has said this week that U.S. employers added 271,000 jobs in December. They only expected 178. This is almost 100,000 more. Government reported 312,000 jobs overall in December, blowing past these expectations. And did you see what the stock market did in response? The stock market that, oh, it's going down, things are going to happen. Boom, turned right around. Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 posted their worst performance since the Great Depression just prior to this event. The unemployment rate rose to 3.9%. The labor force participation rose slightly to 63.1% from 62.9% during the same month. The average hourly earnings rose by 11 cents. Today it's $27.48. I did the math. That's $55,000 a year. Over the year, average hourly earnings have increased by a total of 84 cents, or 3.2%. Stocks surged with the Dow Jones Industrial Average rising 746 points on Friday, and that was after the Fed's chair Jerome Powell said the central bank is prepared to adjust policy quickly and flexibly. His comments followed a jobs report for December that saw annual wages jump the most since 2008. The Dow Jones gain of 3.2% is the best performance on a jobs day since 2002, according to Dow Jones Market Data Group. The Standard & Poor's 500 also rose over 3%, the NASDAQ Composite more than 4.3%. Investors took the comments of Powell, who also said the Fed would be patient about raising rates in the midst of this conflicting economic signal, as a signal that policymakers may be willing to slow down the planned pace of interest rate hikes this year. The central bank is expected to raise rates twice this year. We'll see if they actually do. The experts categorize the gains as unsustainable. But they said that it meant an economic recession may not be as soon as once believed, claiming the U.S. economy will eventually fall into recession, maybe as soon as next year. They said the December employment report indicates this isn't going to happen anytime soon, but there's always hope, you see. Netflix is reporting a new movie which has reached 45 million accounts in the first week of its debut. You remember the numbers for tickets purchased to view a popular movie in the movie theaters? They make a big deal when it comes in the low millions. 2 to 7 million tickets sold is wonderful. So what does all that mean for the future? Well, not a whole lot, because Netflix doesn't sell tickets. They count clicks on their product. And they don't count whether the movie was watched in its entirety or just someone wanted to see what it was about. And statistically, web surfers generally watch something for about 2 to 10 minutes. If you can't stimulate their interest in the first minute, they're moving on. Trust me, I know. I get reports on the hits on my stuff, and it's usually a minute, 2 minutes, and no, I don't want to hear this. Off they go. We learned this week that witches are upset with our president. Real world witches are upset that President Trump is using the phrase witch hunt. Stuff he often tweets in reference to the Mueller investigation. They're on a witch hunt. David Salisbury, author of the book Witchcraft Activism, calls use of the term really disgraceful. A few years ago, the United Church of Christ, a mainline Protestant denomination here in the United States that regularly condemns Israel while remaining virtually silent about jihadist violence against Christians in places like Iraq and Syria, Egypt, Nigeria, Kurdistan, wherever, said it was going to put its money where its mouth was. You know what they're going to do? They're going to divest themselves an investment. They're going to divest themselves of anything to do with Israel. They said that 4 years ago. To date, nothing has changed. What's going on? We'll talk about that later. There was a headline this week that caught my eye. Maybe it did yours as well. It simply said, Lauren Daigle worships God on Good Morning America. This from ChristianHeadlines.com. And the very next line said, here's what she sang. And everything in me went, whoa, wait, time out. She worshiped. You want to tell me what she sang? When did singing a song become a definition for worship? It may be part of it, but it does not constitute the totality. It's a very small part of it. It's an aid to worship. It's not worship itself. Well, it happened when the Charismatics took over the airwaves. 700 Club, TBN, and then they went into all these churches, the Creflo Dollars and all the rest of it. But here's what the article had to say. Christian singer Lauren Daigle is continuing to make the rounds on secular television shows, this time appearing on ABC's Good Morning America. Daigle appeared on GMA last week to sing her hit song, You Say. That from her chart-topping album, Look Up, Child. She was welcomed to the stage as a Grammy-nominated artist by one of the Morning Times show's hosts, Laura Spencer. The singer took to the mic, seized the opportunity to share the Lord with millions of people through her music. How did she do that? Well, she sang her song. Here's what she sang. I want you to keep notes. I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. I am more than just the sum of every high and every low. Remind me once again, just who am I? Because I need to know. All right, class. Did you find the gospel in there anywhere? You remember the headline, right? She goes on this television program to worship God, to share the gospel? No, it's not there. Well, she went on. The song is longer than that. She sang, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say that I am yours, and I believe. From there, she moved into the next verse. She closed her eyes, she raised her hands, and she sang, "The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth. In you I find my identity." Inquiring minds want to know, you who? Never mentioned his name. She could be singing about her boyfriend. And again, when did worship become a singing of a song? The biblical idea of worship is something we do with our spirit as we bow before God in abject humility and reverence, and as we do, not as we sing. But the argument becomes, singing is doing. All right, doing what? Well, it's expressing our love, our commitment, our dedication to God through the Lord Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit. Did you hear any of that in her song? Did she express any of these things? It was just mush, feel-good sentimentality, normal stuff today. This is the same woman who went on the Ellen Show and refused to say what God had said about homosexuality and same-sex unions, claiming her Christian values did not allow her to be condemning, or something like that. God can be condemning and be loving at the same time, but we can't. Oh, you do know Ellen's a homosexual, right? Yeah. Oops. That's what's called compromising. Something the earlier Christians would never do. And in not doing it, they didn't suffer ratings drops. They didn't suffer lack of popularity. They died horrible deaths rather than compromise their beliefs. That's where the church is today. Anything goes. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Stay with me.